Hi, I'm Violet, and this is Now and Then Stories. Each week I share the stories I write, tales of love, chance, and the quiet turns of life that sometimes change everything. Today's story is called Margins of Fate. The coffee shop bell made a softer sound on rainy days, as if even the metal respected the weather. I was halfway through a second cup and a paragraph that didn't want to be finished when he stepped in, damp from the shoulders down and smiling like rain was an old friend he hadn't expected to see. There are faces that feel like memories, even when you're sure you've never seen them, and he had one of those, familiar in the way of a song you can hum before you know its name. He ordered a black coffee, no sugar, but picked up 2 sugar packets anyway. He tore one open and lined the paper neatly along the saucer as if setting a fence. He sat across from me at the table by the window that leaked a thin draft in winter. He pulled a paperback from his jacket pocket. The cover was soft with age, corners blunted. I only noticed it because it was the same edition of the poetry collection I used to own, the one I sold back when rent and groceries couldn't be balanced with nostalgia. When he set the book down, I saw it, the faint bloom of green ink along the margins. My green ink. I felt certain in the sure, irrational way you feel rain on your wrist before it falls. I wrote in the margins when I was 22 because I wanted to talk to the words and have them talk back. I had switched to green one spring as a small rebellion, a way to make my own forest inside other people's sentences. He turned a page, and though it's impossible for eyes to cross a room like birds, I felt something flutter through my ribs. I told myself to focus on my work. I underlined focus in my notebook. It didn't help. The bell tinkled again. A man with a parcel, the barista's laugh, the sound of a milk jug being set down. Everything kept happening, but the room had tilted, quieting its noise, as if we were inside a held breath. I must have been staring, because when I looked up, he was looking back. He lifted the book half an inch in a question. "Do you know this one?" he asked. His voice had the warm rasp of someone who spoke softly by default. "I used to," I said. "It's an old friend." I still hadn't decided whether to ask the absurd thing. "Can I see that? I think it used to be mine." It felt like approaching a magic trick to find the hidden string and ruining what made it float. He gestured to my table. "I'm sorry, are you working? I can leave you to it." "I'm pretending to work," I said, which was both a joke and a confession. "Please sit." I don't know why I said that. He had already sat down across the room, but he took it as if the imagined seat had been offered, and he moved to join me. His proximity made the rain smell a little like crushed leaves. Up close, the paperback had a crease along the spine at my favorite poem, third section, last stanza. He turned the page, and there my handwriting was, the tilted loops and long tails I haven't been able to change even now. This last line feels like a door you didn't know was there. My breath snagged. I watched his eyes find the annotation. There was that tiny moment of recognition, someone else's thought catching on your own like a sleeve. "I found this at the used bookstore on Maple," he said, as if we had already established that I too knew this book. "There are notes," he added. "I noticed," I said. "They're good." He touched the margin without quite touching it. "She writes like the poems are addresses to her, like she's writing back." I wondered who she was. He said it like one might say, "I wonder who carved these initials on the bridge." Not an intrusion, but an inheritance. His hello, because that's what it was, had been to a voice in the margins. It made my skin feel too tight. "She was 22, I said before thinking. "She had a green pen because she had decided black and blue were for bank forms." He blinked at me. I could see the rain stilled on his eyelashes. "Was?" "She is," I corrected. "I'm her." "Me." My laugh had a nervous edge. "I mean, I used to have that book. I sold it years ago." He looked down at the page, then back up at me, and in between the two looks there was a soft, precise shift, as if the picture had clicked into focus. He held the book with the care you hold a small thing that may need returning. "I think it's yours," he said. "It is," I said. And then, because this is the sort of thing I've learned from years of being a person who does not run from coincidences. Or maybe it was. Maybe it's where it ought to be, which is with the person who noticed. We smiled at each other like two people who had finally introduced themselves at a party they had both been at for hours. Outside, the rain increased in volume as if applauding a scene change. I have a theory about fate. It isn't a string pulling you, it's a series of places that remember you. You step into them and the room rearranges itself around your shape. The coffee shop always felt like that to me. So did the bus stop near the laundromat that rattled on windy afternoons, and the used bookstore on Maple with the bell made from a bent spoon. So did the small park with 3 sycamores where, one summer, a branch fell and missed my shoulder by inches and I decided to leave a job I hated. He told me his name was Eli. I told him mine and watched his mouth form it like something he'd practiced. He had moved to the neighborhood 2 months earlier, which was about when I'd stopped taking sugar in my coffee. We compared details the way people in a new city compare maps. He'd grown up 2 towns over. His accent was local but softened by time elsewhere. He worked with photographs, archiving, scanning the fragile ones before the past faded out of them. I find what's almost gone, he said, and give it another life. He said it without sounding romantic, which somehow made it more romantic. We talked about the book like it was a third person at the table. He asked if I wanted it back. I said I didn't know. It had already gathered new meaning with him. It had sat in his pocket through rain and bus rides and the kind of mornings where you get dressed in the dark. Maybe books, like people, deserve to have different lives. The barista brought his coffee and raised her eyebrows at me in the universal well hello expression. I rolled my eyes and nodded at the rain. Eli didn't see. He was reading the green note again. I watched his lips move without sound on the last stanza and felt a promise unroll between us, too small to name, already strong enough to pull a room's weight. We parted with a plan that pretended not to be one. We would both be at the used bookstore at 5 because Mr. Alvarez, the owner, knew the provenance of every book and would enjoy the story. It was admittedly an excuse to see if this sudden, improbable feeling could stand in a different light. We promised nothing beyond that. I went to the laundromat because my basket was already by the door, and it seemed reckless to abandon every ritual in one day. At the laundromat, the machines made their white noise confession. Together, we're who we are, keep spinning, keep rinsing. An older woman with a red scarf folded towels sharper than some paper cranes. I watched socks orbit a small star. I thought about 22-year-old me and the version of myself I wrote into margins, and the sweetness of imagining she'd written to someone who, one day, would answer. On the way home, the bus was late. A busker played a sad song without apology. A girl in a yellow coat was telling her mother, "This rain will shrink the world until it fits under our umbrella." My phone buzzed, a reminder to cancel a subscription I didn't need. I stood under the shelter and thought about fate again. It isn't a string, it's a place. Yes, but maybe it's also a frequency. You find people who hum at the same pitch. 5 o'clock at Mr. Alvarez's means more light than space. Books ricochet brightness back to each other, the white of pages multiplying the window. Eli was already there, speaking in low tones to Mr. Alvarez, who wore a cardigan the color of tea. When I pushed open the door, the spoon bell clinked, and Mr. Alvarez's face lit as if heralding a favorite plot twist. "I knew this day would come," he said theatrically, and flung out one arm. "You did?" I asked, laughing. "I didn't," he admitted, "but it's good for business to believe in narrative symmetry." We stood at the counter like defendants in a light-hearted trial. Eli placed the book between us with the same care he had at the coffee shop. Mr. Alvarez adjusted his glasses and turned the book over. "I remember the green ink," he said. "I wondered about the girl with the forest pen. You sold this to me 4 years ago?" 5, I corrected, and he glanced up at me with a kindness that felt like permission to have been wrong about time. He squinted at the price pencil mark he'd put on the corner. "It sat a while," he said. "Then this one," he jerked his chin gently toward Eli, "came in and bought it on a Tuesday. I remember because the radio station was playing nothing but songs from 1990-something, and I felt both ancient and 17. Eli touched the counter as if to steady himself on the moment. "I picked it up," he said, because it had the feeling of having been read by someone careful. Books get a certain warmth when they've been talked to. I don't know how to explain it. You explained it, Mr. Alvarez said, satisfied. I'll leave you to your story. He waved and drifted down an aisle. Do you want to walk? I asked Eli. It had stopped raining in that bright post-storm way that makes everything look like it has freshly decided to exist. We walked without choosing a direction, which is itself a kind of choosing. The neighborhood had the washed look of a face after tears. Children were stomping in puddles with the reverence of people catching the last of something sweet. A couple argued gently about Basil. A cyclist whistled a tune that I couldn't place until I realized it was the same melody as the sad song from the bus stop, sped up and made hopeful. That made me smile. Everything is a cover of something else. We ended up at the little park with the 3 sycamores. The bench with the bent slat was dry on one end. I brushed away a few leaves and we sat. Birds made the polite noises they make when people are speaking near them. We set the book between us like a shared loaf. Do you want it back? He asked again. He wasn't tentative about it now. He was careful in a new way, attentive not to break the current. I think, I said, that I'd like to keep it on Wednesdays. Just Wednesdays? And Thursdays, I conceded. You can have it the rest. We could trade it, he said, and grinned. A custody arrangement for a poetry book. It was ridiculous and perfect. We smiled because of the silliness and because it offered a structure to something that might otherwise float away. The bench, the trees, the late slant of light, the world inched closer. What were you writing back then? He asked. Everything, I said. Lists, mostly. Things I thought I'd forget. Things I didn't want to forget because then I'd lose the shape of that year. I wrote in the margins like I'd leave clues for someone later. Here is where I was standing when I read this. Here is who I was missing. He nodded as if I'd told him a method he could use. I scanned a photograph today, he said. A family gathered around a kitchen table. The mother's hand was blurred on the picture. Everything else was clear. I thought maybe the most important parts of pictures should be a little blurry. It gives them a pulse. I looked at his hands then, neat, expressive, the kind of hands that would notice a blur and call it important. Do you ever take your own pictures? I used to, he said. He tilted his head as if listening for something far away. It's easier to keep other people's histories alive. Your own feel tacky when you hold them too long. Maybe we could trade that too, I said. I'll keep yours for a while. You hold mine. Then we give them back when the heat has gone out of them. He looked at me like he was trying to memorize the outline so he could find me again if the day suddenly went dark. Deal, he said. We sat in the quiet that is not empty. The sky broke into blue in a way that felt like permission. We didn't say much else. We didn't need to. That was the middle of the story. We didn't know it then, of course, but the middle feels like that, like you've wandered into a room that was already arranged for you, and all you have to do is sit down. The next weeks didn't announce themselves as anything but themselves. Mornings with coffee, afternoons with errands, evenings where the light had a temperature I could name. The story didn't rush. It made a nest in the ordinary. Wednesday we traded the book, and Mr. Alvarez rang it up twice for the fun of it. For the receipt trail, he said. Eli showed me the archive where he worked, a climate-controlled room where photographs lay like sleeping birds. He told me the names of processes, albumin print, cyanotype, like they were cousins. He scanned a picture of my grandparents I brought in and explained why the edges were soft, the way paper in the 40s held light. At the coffee shop, the barista learned our orders and teased us without cruelty. The bell kept making its small, weathered music. The rain came and went. Somewhere in there, we learned the other's laugh and what topics to save for when we could watch each other's hands as we spoke. He told me about a brother who lived in another time zone and sent him videos of his garden. I told him about the way my mother kept her recipes in a shoebox and never wrote the most important step because she assumed everyone knew it. When to take the cookies out just before they're done. Then, one day as we were leaving, it just happened. He reached for my hand. The way you reach for the rail on a staircase you've walked 100 times, without looking and with complete trust in where it will be. The world settled around us in its small, kind ways. Coffee shop mornings, laundry day confessions, post-storm walks through the park, until one day I found myself alone again in that same cafe, rain tracing new stories on the glass. Eli was at an exhibit across town, and I was waiting to meet him later. The seat across from me was empty, but full somehow with the memory of how it all began. I looked down at the book beside my cup, the worn paperback with its forest green scrawl, open to the same poem that started everything. The note I'd written years ago smiled up at me. This last line feels like a door you didn't know was there. Maybe every door is really just a return, waiting for the right person to walk through again. A bell chimes softly as the door opens. I glanced up, half expecting to see him, but it was only a stranger coming in from the rain. Still, the moment carried the same quiet electricity, the same soft recognition of something that's meant to be. I closed the book, finished my coffee, and watched the city blur into motion beyond the glass. Rain traced new lines over old reflections, rewriting the story in its own hand, and maybe that's how it always is. Now and then, the world rewrites us too. We just have to notice when it does. The end. Thank you for listening to Now and Then Stories with Violet. If this story spoke to you, I hope you'll stay a while. There are always more moments waiting to be found between now and then.